everyone, and welcome to our training today on how to still get approved for SBA disaster loans and other funding that you can get right now. So as many of you know, by the time I'm filming this, it's April 21st. Last week, the PPP funding and EIDL, SBA's disaster funding, ran out of money, but it looks like this week more money will come in. We're going to talk about how much more money may come into this program, how to still get approved if you haven't get approved, how to get funded, not just approved. And a lot of people are asking me, how else can I get money? So we're going to dive in and talk about a lot of the other funding products you can get as well. My goal here is by the end of this training, you're going to have a path forward to get your application in for SBA's disaster loans, to be able to actually get funded on these loans, and then also to tell you about probably 25 or 30 other ways that you can get money right now with everything that's going on that may be easier to get while you're waiting to actually get approved for any kind of SBA financing. So for those that don't know me, my name's Ty Crandall. I'm CEO of Credit Suite. If we can help you along the way, this is what we do. We help business owners get money. We help you improve your fundability. We help you build business credit. So if we can help you get money to make it through this difficult time, feel free to reach out to us, 877-600-2487, or you can get approved online just by answering a handful of questions at creditsuite.com/get-funding. If you're attending live on YouTube, I will make sure that these links are on the bottom of my slides so you can access them at any time. So first of all, let's talk about other ways you can get money right now. Okay, we're going to dive in and decode the update on SBA, but before I do, I just want to start and end with, hey, there's a lot of other ways you can get money outside of SBA. So if you're like so many other Americans that are frustrated right now with your ability to get money from SBA system, let me introduce you to at least a few other options that you may have. The first of which, the biggest, most popular program we have right now, is called our Credit Line Hybrid. With this program, you get up to $150,000 in credit lines. You get 0% rates for up to 18 months. It's no doc. You don't need to supply tax returns. You don't need to supply bank statements. You could take the cash out of this money and do so at the 0% rate. Even if your revenue is declining, even if you're a nonprofit, even if you're a startup, you're still able to get approved. To get approved, you must have a 680 FICO score or higher, or a guarantor that does. So if you have a family member, a friend, a potential investor, any of those people, you could use their credit to qualify for this program in lieu of your own. You don't need collateral. There are no cash flow requirements. You'll end up getting multiple credit lines, about 5 to 8 typically, and they're going to give you an option of whether or not you want cards that just report to the business credit reporting agencies or standard and business cards. The difference is if you get both, you get max funding. If you just get business cards, you'll get reduced. You'll get a smaller amount of funding, but you'll only get accounts with credit or with credit lines that report to the business credit reporting agencies. Lenders on this program will charge a fee. It's 9.99. Well, they charge 12%. Our customers get 9.99%, so we get a huge discount there. And then they roll the fee in. So you don't pay anything out of pocket. They roll whatever fee in, they get you into the funding. So when people ask me all the time, what's the best way to get money right now, especially while I'm waiting for SBA, this is the #1 program that we tapped into. It's also the #1 program that we're offering our clients as well. Don't forget, yet another option that you're able to get approved for is business credit, as well as, actually, let me see here. I'm having problems on my site. So give me 1 second here. Okay, there we go. So don't forget, you also have a lot of options here with business credit. You can still get business credit for your EIN that's not linked to your social. So that means you can get approved without consumer credit checks, without a personal guarantee, without inquiries on your personal credit report. You're getting credit limits 10 to 100 times higher than what you're going to find with consumer credit. You're getting this really quickly. This is money you're able to get in about 30 to 60 days. You're able to start getting, and you're really separating your consumer and commercial credit report. So a lot of benefits here. The reason I'm showing you these two programs is it's important to note that in the business funding world, much funding has ceased, stopped, or halted. And almost all of that was related to people's revenue. When there was lenders that lent money based on your revenue, all that stuff is indefinitely on hold. But what we found is the credit markets are still wide open. So when it comes to credit lines, when it comes to these kind of when it comes to commercial credit, you can still get high limits on all these accounts right now, even though a lot of the lending options from the business space aren't happening. And I'll talk to you a little bit more about these as we actually get ready to wrap up today. This could be a longer webinar here because my mouse is not working as well as it should. So don't forget, there are also a lot of other funding you can get as well. I'll talk about this as we wrap up. But if you have an asset that can serve as collateral, whether it be 401k stocks, bonds, IRAs, commercial real estate, residential real estate, commercial vehicles, purchase orders, account receivables. If you have some kind of asset as collateral, those markets are still wide open too. You can still use any of those collateral as assets as collateral to get funding. So a lot of options still available there as well. And of course, these loans, these revenue lending, merchant cash advances based on your revenue, SBA loans, term loans, lines of credit, these 5 are really hard to get right now. Everything else you hear works really well. As a matter of fact, there's a ton of money being dumped into businesses right now for private investors. Private investors have been waiting for this moment to get in. A lot of that money is still free flowing. You can still get peer-to-peer lending at places like Lending Club, Prosper, for example. That money's still free flowing. You can get 620 FICO scores, get in on that. You can still get money to borrow against, buy equipment, borrow against inventory. We helped a huge Amazon seller yesterday get 2 different kinds of inventory financing. So if you're an e-commerce person selling stuff on Amazon, for example, all kinds of inventory financing where you can get the money to buy the products you need on Amazon. In his case, he had $800,000 in inventory and is able to get a credit line against that inventory. So a lot of those kind of options are still available even outside of SBA. So let's talk about this. SBA loans, as you know, everything's rapidly changing. What I'm going to talk to you about today is what's happening now. They are now approved in all 50 states, so you can get approved in all 50 states, include territories as well, like the U.S. Virgin Islands. So again, I'm not going to go through, I'm going to skip pretty quick through all the details of these loans because I presented multiple times on it, and I don't think you probably want to hear it again. But I am going to talk a lot about what's going on, a path forward, and I am still going to go ahead and touch upon what's happening with these loans as well. Okay, so that being said, and Trotty says, how much does it sign up with Credit Suite is the question. Go to creditsuite.com. You can see the pricing on our page. It depends on if you want to be a partner, if you want business credit, and then of course we never charge you anything on financing. So if we can help you with funding, there's never a charge. But feel free to check out our website, creditsuite.com/pricing, Trotty, and you can also email us or visit us online as well. Okay, so some of the details are still being worked on. Again, this slide's just to tell you everything's changing. As more money is released, more things will happen, but what I'm giving you now is the most up to date. Of course, what we're talking about is the CARES Act, right? This is the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act, what we all know as the CARES Act. So everything I'm talking about here, the 2 kinds of funding we're going to talk about with SBA, PPP and EIDL, are offered through this CARES Act. Now, I bring this up because a lot of people still don't remember this, that if you have an outstanding loan with SBA, SBA will waive 6 months worth of payments on that loan. This was the first relief that we got as a company. We have an SBA loan. We went to our lender. It was very fast process, and they relieved us of 6 months of not having to make a payment. So this is a program that's not talked about a lot, but if you have an existing SBA loan, it could be a real lifesaver. Okay, our SBA loan payments are like $4,000 a month, $4,000 or $5,000 a month. So you can imagine that's really helpful when we don't have to make another $30,000 worth of payments on that loan. So again, if you have an SBA loan, don't forget you can get the payments on that loan waived for 6 months. Also, a lot of people are not talking about SBA's Express Bridge Loan Program, which is another option that you have. We're not hearing much about these, but with this program, you can get pretty fast turnaround as a bridge loan with SBA, and you can get approved for up to $25,000. I've given you 2 links, sba.gov/disaster, and I've also given you the actual program guide. If you're watching this, you can take a quick screenshot of that, or you can find that on sba.gov/document. You'll be able to actually get the specific document. But a lot of people forget about this as well. This can help you bridge the gap when you're actually waiting for the other programs that are going to take a little bit more time, including the PPP loan, which let's talk about that. So far where we are, and I got a couple questions here, so I want to make sure I get those answered. CF and F tax cohort, good afternoon from East Texas. Welcome. Hag said, I saw it said 0% rate, then I heard 9.9. Okay, so the credit line hybrid program works like this. You can get up to 150,000 in credit lines. You get a 0% interest rate for about 6 to 18 months. Then you pay normal credit card rates after that, like 6 to 16%, depending on credit or normal credit card rates. And the 9.99% is a fee the finance program, the funding source will charge you and roll into the credit lines you get. So they call it a a success-based fee. You're going to pay a one-time fee for whatever amount they get you approved for, just like an SBA loan, right? You pay an SBA fee, SBA rolls it right into the loan. Same thing with the credit line hybrid. So hopefully that answers the question. And CF and Tax Court says bridge loan only apply if you have an existing SBA loan. It's not only if you have an existing SBA loan, but they want you to actually have a relationship with an SBA Express lender. So you can get this even if you don't have an SBA loan, but you need to have a relationship with an SBA Express lender now. So let's talk about PPP, what we already know, right? They authorized $349 billion. I said for weeks that in 10 days the money would be gone, and I believe on the 9th day the money was gone. So sure enough, in 10 business days the actual money was gone. Right now it looks like there might be funds coming, and we're going to talk a little bit more about what that looks like. So who can give you these loans? We're going to talk a lot about this today because everybody got stuck. So it's lenders with delegated authority from SBA. Now what's interesting is we started this with 1,600 SBA approved lenders. Last time I checked, SBA had funded loans through over 2,400 sources. So it just goes to show that there's a good chance they doubled, if not tripled, the amount of lenders allowed to issue these loans during this process. Okay, FinTech got involved as well. Places like PayPal and On Deck are approved to do PPP loans. Now, be careful. Others like Cabbage is not a direct lender of SBA. They are what we call an agent. They get loans and they submit to another bank, and then the bank has to submit to SBA loan. So it's very tricky in the fintech space right now. I see a lot of companies just trying to immediately advertise that they can do SBA loans, right? I've seen this happen with Nav. I've seen it happen with Lendio. I've seen it happen with Cabbage. But the reality is these guys don't have the ability to be able to do SBA loans. If most, they become agents and they refer the loans to a bank that will accept them. So you need to be very careful here because there's only some fintech sources that are approved to do these outside of the major banks, and or banks that are government insured, credit unions that are federally insured. So you should Google them before you submit a loan in. Go and say PayPal, PPP loan. Are they actually an agent of a bank that they're submitting them to, or can they directly send loans into SBA? You should know that. If you're trying to get your application in quickly, then the best way to do it is to get it through the source that's actually going to submit it through SBA. Okay, some brokers are a little better and faster because they have internal relationships. But if you get through somebody like Cabbage, I'm not telling you not to do this. You should just be aware that when you apply a loan through Cabbage or through one of these other sources that I mentioned, they are ultimately getting the loan and placing it with a lender. Then the lender has to submit to SBA. So there's an extra step there. Now I'm mentioning that to you because a lot of sources started immediately taking applications for PPP, and a lot of people thought they were safe. And then what I heard on the back end was these sources were trying to place these loans. Like a week, 2 weeks later, they had no bank to even send it to. So there were applicants that thought they had applications in, and the reality is these sources were looking for banks to actually place the business with. So be careful. PayPal, On Deck, authorized to be able to issue these SBA loans. If you're going to submit to a fintech online lender, do a little bit of research before you actually submit it to them. It's really going to help you a lot. Okay, this lets lenders determine, lenders are determining eligibility here. They don't need to go through SBA. A big deal used to be with SBA loans and still is that you have to get approved with a bank. Then SBA reviews it. Then you actually fund. But in this case, what's actually happening is you actually have the ability here for the lender to make the actual determination themselves of whether or not you can get approved without going through SBA. Now this, of course, was supposed to be designed to actually expedite the process. So let's look at some of the stats so far. Last week, Thursday, PPP ran out of funds. It left us with 6% of small businesses in the U.S. were approved, about 1.6 million. Don't know if that math adds up. I saw the 6% one place, the 1.6 million in another. There's about 30 million small businesses, but you can get an idea of 30 million small businesses in this country, 1.6 got a loan. Okay, so if you are left out and didn't get one, well, guess what? You're one of the 28.4 of 30 million that didn't. So there's a lot of businesses, the vast majority, it's estimated at 93% or higher, did not get loans. I've seen it at about 6%. Average loan amount was $206,000. The burn rate of this money was $50 billion a day. Wow. $50 billion a day. They're now estimating it would take us $1 trillion in total funding to be able to make a dent in this. So we're expecting to possibly see 1 or 3 more waves of money potentially come in. We have no way of knowing, right? Because people in our government have to get along, and I don't know about you, but that seems like really hard for them to do, is to be able to get along and come to terms on things. But hopefully they'll be able to figure that out, and we will be able to get more rounds of funding released. Okay, most people are still waiting to get funding. You've got to be careful here. When you see the news, there's a difference between the SBA saying we've guaranteed this money and banks saying we funded it. You have to be very careful. So what happens is, let's say Bank of America sends an application into SBA that meets all the parameters, and SBA says, yes, this person meets the parameters that you've set. I've set aside $206,000 for that business. Meaning SBA told Bank of America, we guarantee this loan now. It's guaranteed. You can give them that $206,000. The problem is Bank of America, the bank, still has to release the $206,000 to you. And that's another holdup, because a lot of the banks are still waiting for updated processes and documentation from SBA to make sure they feel comfortable to fund these loans. So what we're seeing here is very interesting. A lot of the smaller community banks were the first ones to step up and fund these deals because they felt comfortable without having all that documentation to fund the actual deal. When I say fund a deal, I mean give you money, right? Because we don't care about anything else. I care about you getting the money in your bank account. That's funded a deal. So otherwise, your bank could have got your application in, and SBA could have said, yes, we guarantee this application. The money is there to be lent, but the last step is your bank has to release that funding, and they all have different comfort levels of their willingness to do this because they're still waiting for exact things from SBA that just weren't available, that just haven't been available to them. So we're seeing these small community banks kind of fund a little bit more because they're more comfortable. The bigger banks are still a little bit hesitant till they get everything they need to release the funding to you. So be very careful. There's a difference between money being guaranteed by SBA and being funded by your actual bank. A lot of people are still waiting to get funded because those funding processes are still not fully established as of yet. And I'm going to go and answer a few questions here. Tracy says, wouldn't the cash from cards of the hybrid program be at much higher interest rate than compared to 0%? No, that's the whole point. The credit line hybrid program that I mentioned to you in the beginning, you can get the rate, you can get the money at 0% for up to 18 months and take the cash out. That's why I call it a hybrid. Because a credit card, usually if you try to take cash out, you'd pay 20%. And a credit line usually doesn't have 0% rates. So I call it a credit line hybrid because you could take cash out to answer your question, Tracy, and you still could take the cash out at 0%. It's why it's such a popular program. CFNF Texas says PPP eligibility, no employees, self-employed are eligible, no payroll. We will talk about that. Brian says, I have vendor with PPP and good TP and e-bikes need to help with getting biz started. EIN DUNS number, I can my tax return to help start. Okay, I don't know exactly what that is, but if we can help you, then give us a ring. Janelle says, if you have a business set up for your brand new venture, would it be wise to create a sole prop now or a corporation? You should choose corporation or LLC. Stay away from sole prop. Okay, so I'm going to wait, and I will get to the rest of your questions, but I'll get to them at the end because a lot of people are still waiting to get the content, and then I'll make sure your questions are answered at the end. So here's just some preliminary numbers. Chase, 14 billion. PNC arranged 9 billion. KeyCorp arranged 8.8 billion. This is the money they got guaranteed from SBA. It's not the amount that they've yet funded, but it gives you just a glimpse of some of the banks and how much money they actually set aside. Chase is one of the biggest that I've seen in number wise that got a lot of files across. So this is the new process. This is the new money coming in. Great quote today I saw. This is going to go within at most 72 hours, says Consumer Bankers Association President Richard Hunt, who represents large banks, but the odds are more like 48 hours. This is in reference to the new money that is getting ready to go into the PPP program. So the new SBA, the CARES Act program, got $349 billion for small businesses. Right now, this week, it is being dealt with at a government level to try to issue another $300 billion. This is in reference to that. They believe that money is going to go within 48 to 72 hours. So how do you apply? How do you actually get approved? Well, as I'm going to talk about, if you don't have an application in already, then chances are good you just might not get funding. Realistically, you might not. Okay, but you do have at least some chance, and it's worth at least getting your application in. Just because the program's out of money doesn't mean you shouldn't apply. Okay, a lot of applications are keeping their place in line until the program funds again. This is the order of places you should apply with. Small community bank, your own bank preferably if you can get it. If you don't have a relationship with a small community bank, you're probably not going to get approved with them. They probably won't even accept your application, but you should try to even set up a banking relationship with them if they'll accept your PPP loan. Credit unions your second best. The big banks are your third bet, and then fintech companies, Paycheck, PayPal. I said Bank of America, and I didn't mean that. What I meant here was PayPal or On Deck. Okay, so that's my advice based on everything. I said actually the exact same order for 2 weeks, but now that we have all the data supports the same thing. Small community banks are the best, and the reason for that is that small community banks know they know their people really well. Like, I'm from a small town called Elwood, Indiana, 9,000 population. My dad used to be vice president of the bank. My dad always would tell me stories of all these farmers that would come in and deals that would be done just based on handshakes, right? That's still the way a lot of things, the business is done in small towns. So like, if I go into my bank, if my mom and dad go into their bank in my hometown, my bank, that credit union knows everybody. They know everybody there very well at a very in-depth level. So if you go to them and you say, here's my story, like my business is getting ready to shut down, like that's a very emotional level. Like, people in my town, like many small towns, they're very close to each other. So like, our local car dealership shutting down is a really big deal. Like, we know him. Like, I grew up with his kids, et cetera, et cetera. So what happens is these small community banks were kind of able to really understand the needs of their customers and get applications in and get them funded, even when a lot of the bigger banks haven't. So small community banks were the ticket, credit union second, your bank is the third, and your PayPal at On Deck. And I only put them last because we don't know yet. We never seen them. We've never seen fintech fund deals before for SBA, so it's anybody's guess of how that program is going to work. But that's my order of places to apply if you haven't already. Now, as I mentioned, if you haven't submitted an application, you need to get it in today. Reasonably, I'll be honest with you, you may be wasting your time. If you apply on the 21st of April, you may have no shot of getting money. The question becomes, how many more rounds of funding will come? We don't know. But you need to make sure that if you haven't already, you have to get your application in right now, today. Now, beyond that, you also really need to focus on understanding that even there's a small chance of getting approved. Like, you may not have a good chance of getting approved if your app isn't in already. But if your app is in, well, many lenders are continuing their approval process waiting for funds to become available. So that's good news. So even though like the 349 is done, you're not done. So example, today at 10:45, 10:50, our bank, Regions Bank, called us and said, hey, we're looking at your application now. And I joked and I said, Crystal, are you getting ready to fund our application? And she laughed and she goes, there is no funding. I said, I know, I'm just messing with you. And her and I kind of went back and forth with a little banter. And then she said, I have some questions to finish your application. So I said, okay, here's the answer to those questions. And then they are going to submit the application once more funding becomes available. Now, they were our second choice. We went through a small community bank through my own SBA loan broker first. They are further ahead. They got us further ahead, but never got us funding. So they got us all the way to ready to submit the application to SBA system, and SBA shut off funding. So we are like one of the first 5 people in line the minute funds become available to push the through again. So we'll talk about multiple banks here in just a second. But again, the approval process with many of them continues even though funds are out. They're getting applications ready to submit, so the minute funds become available, they're submitting them again through SBA's E-Trans system. So this makes sense to apply for 2 sources, okay? People ask me this all the time. And a lot of people regret it. They're like, I should have applied there. There's no way of knowing. I sit here now, and I've looked through these banks and said, okay, who should we apply for as a third source if we need it? And I've looked through so many different news articles and so much that's going on that I can't even tell you the big bank that would be worth to apply. Our strategy was very simple. We went to our bank, Regions Bank. We also went to our SBA lender. We went to both at the same time. We literally were in the front of the line. We got our application in within 10 minutes of them opening the window. Our application was completely submitted. The week that they ran out of funding, last week, the one bank said, okay, we're changing our entire application process. Here it is. Within an hour, we had them all the new stuff they asked for, and then we got all the way to deal submitted, and then they put on the brakes because we ran out of money. Regions got us just now. They're calling to get to our application. To give you an idea, we submitted it 2 weeks ago Friday. So it gives you an idea. Over 2 weeks, about 2.5 weeks it took for them to even get us on the phone and say, look, we are getting ready to process your application right now. To give you an idea of time frame. So we applied at both banks. I'm not going to tell you it's a good or bad idea. I think you have to have your own strategy. I like this idea, but there's a huge caveat. The way the SBA works is that they have a system that all these applications go through, okay? And if they see, and they call it E-Tran. So if the deal is submitted from the bank through E-Tran, and E-Tran picks up multiple applications, there's a very good chance that they are going to kick it out and stop both due to fraud. We don't know. We haven't seen it happen. It's all new to all of us, but I'm telling you what happens. SBA has a system, a portal, E-Tran. Banks are submitting it. Banks send two applications for you into E-Tran. E-Tran picks up the duplicate, throws up fraud concerns, and then who knows what happens, right? Like, how does SBA handle that? Who knows? But I'm telling you, it could permanently cease or ruin your ability to get approved. So should you apply with multiple lenders? You see what I'm saying here. You have a choice. Our choice was to do yes, but there's a reason for it. We have relationships with both of our lenders that if we call one and say we want to withdraw our application right now, then they will withdraw the application. We didn't just submit to Bank of America waiting for Bank of America to call back. We have a personal banker that at Regions that can stop our application. We have an application with our SBA lender that can stop it as well, or with our small community bank. So if you're going to submit to multiple sources, you have to be able to stop the second application. Because if you don't do that and two apps go through E-Tran, then even if your first one's approved, it may get kicked out because of fraud. So you have to be very cautious with that. That's how E-Tran system works. It's important that you know that. So let's talk about documentation. Well, I'm going to tell you what you really need, but your bank might require a lot more. You need a Paycheck Protection Plan application, a Form 940 and 941. Those are for your annual payroll for 2019 and 20. 2019 payroll report and monthly payroll report showing the number of employees and their wages. Driver's license and voided check. We've seen some places ask for bank statements. We've seen some places ask for tax returns. But again, that's not needed. This is all that's really needed to process. Now, don't get me wrong. I found two different directions banks are going here. One way is that banks ask for way more documentation than they need to slow down the amount of applications that they have coming in. The other just asks for an inquiry, your phone number, your name, so they can get in touch with you. You're not even submitting an application. So you should know what you really need, and then you can figure out in between if they are both, or if it is either or, okay? And I will talk, I have a ton of questions coming in, but I'm going to wait to the end to answer those questions only because a lot of people are just here for the information, and I want to make sure that I get to those people and then get everybody's questions answered as well. So I'm not going to spend a bunch of time on this because I've already talked about it before. You have less than 500 employees, you were in operation before February 15th, 2020, and you had people on your payroll, whether paid W-2 or 1099, you are eligible. So I see a lot of people here that are complaining about places like Ruth Chris that got a lot of money and Shake Shack. But look, the reality is a lot of them have multiple locations. They have less than 500 employees per locations, and they were shut down like the rest of us. So whether your opinions that they should have or shouldn't got money, everybody's got their opinion. But keep in mind, these are the requirements that it actually takes to get approved. Okay, how much you get approved for? We've talked about this before. I just want to briefly touch upon it. 2.5 times the amount of your average payroll. They're going to look at your last 12 months of payroll. They're going to add them up. They're going to divide by 12 for 12 months. Then they're going to multiply that average by 2.5 times. That's how much money you'll get. And they're going to add back in this EIDL loan, the emergency injury, the economic injury disaster loan, which I will tell you about that in a minute as well. Okay, so some other things. These loans are no recourse. There's no personal guarantee. And through June 30th, SBA is not charging a fee, nor is the SBA telling the bank to charge a fee as well. You don't have to make payments for 6 months on this. I'm going to show you right now how to not pay payments at all, but I'm going to go through this pretty quickly because if you've covered any of my prior training, we already went through this. So again, you don't have to make payments for 6 months at all, and the loan will be completely forgiven if you're using it for payroll cost, any cost associated with payroll, okay, any indebted or rent or utility payments, in interest on mortgage or rent. Okay, so actually, yeah, that's exactly right. I think I might have worded that wrong. So to be correct, you get payroll. If the money is spent for payroll, 75% or more, if up to 25% can be used for rent payments, interest on mortgages, or utilities. If you've done that, then that debt 100% can be forgiven. And here we go, is a look at that. Again, you got 75% or more needs to be used for payroll. 25% max can be used for rent payment, you interest on mortgage, or utilities. If you're using it for that much money, it could be 100% forgiven. They will take 60 days max to review your requirement or your documentation request for forgiveness. So here's how it works. You get the loan. Within 8 weeks of getting the loan, you need to spend up to 75% of the money on payroll, up to 25% on utilities, on rent or interest on mortgages. If you've done that, you collect the documentation to prove it, you send it to the lender that issued the loan, and they will then review that within 60 days, and they will forgive that amount of money, and you may never need to make a payment. I just showed you how to get away from ever making a payment on this as well, okay? Now, EIDL. So the EIDL is the Economic Injury Disaster Loan, and these are a little bit different than PPP. PPP really only works for you if you have payroll. If you don't have payroll, then that's not going to really be that good for you. But if you don't have payroll, then an EIDL may be the actual way to go. So they will look at your credit history. Unlike PPP, you have to have the credit history to actually be able to get approved, and you have to be in a place that's located as a disaster area, but almost all of them are. But here's an update on this. When this came out, they said you could get loans up to $2 million, but this is what we've seen. We've seen them cap loans at 15 grand. 15 grand is the most you're going to get. Now keep in mind, EIDL is out of money too. PPP and EIDL are both out of money. When we're seeing another $300 billion, it looks like, may come into the system this week. Remember, I showed you that they said within 48 to 72 hours that $300 billion could go. Okay, but from what we've seen with that EIDL loan, they're giving loans of 15 grand. They're giving a grant up to 10 grand. It was 10 grand for everybody in the beginning. Then they said up to 10 grand, $1,000 per employee is what you can get. Interest rate of 3.75% for profit companies, terms up to 30 years, and eligibility is based on your business size, type of business, and financial resources, basically, is how that's going to work with the EIDL. Now, EIDL, let me see if there's anything on there. Okay, no, this is what it's used for. Pay fixed debts, payroll, accounts payable, other bills. It doesn't matter. The bottom line is this has to be paid back, so it really doesn't matter. But the loan is designed to help you basically deal with decreased revenue, increased expenses. Okay, so EIDL, you can't go to your bank. You got to go to disasterloan.sba.gov. There's only one way in. Don't even go to ELA. Just go to disasterloan.sba.gov. You can apply. When you apply, there's a way to apply for that $10,000 grant. There's a checkbox you can check to be able to get approved for that. Now, it says maximum unsecured loan of 25 grand. That's the way it was when it came out. They said anything above 25 grand, you need collateral, but we've seen no loans get approved that high. Everything is getting approved at 15 grand, so that's really a non-issue to begin with. So again, here is some different information on how to apply. I've given you SBA's customer service number. Again, I asked last time and nobody let me know through email how long of the wait time is with SBA's customer service line. I'm curious about that myself, but I've given you their phone number. I've given you their mail address. I've given you their email address. I wouldn't expect a fast reply, but you have it now. But again, disasterloan.sba.gov is how you get that EIDL loan. So I've shown you how to apply and how to get approved for both of those loans, including EIDL. Now, don't forget, as we get ready to wrap up, I want to also mention that a lot of people right now, let's look at this math, okay? 6% of U.S. businesses got SBA's PPP loans. 94% didn't, okay? They think they're going to put another $300 billion in. Based on rough math, that could be another 5% of small businesses. So even with the second round of funding that could come this week, we're only talking about maybe 10 or 11% of businesses that need help are getting it. So 90% are not and 10% are. Okay, now, will there be more funding after this 300? We just don't know. They said at least $1 trillion is really needed for this program. If we get another 300, we're like halfway to what we really need. Will they fund more? We don't know. None of us know at this point. Right now, they're just trying to get this other 300 billion across. But the bottom line is, even if they got another 300 billion behind that, you're still looking at only 10-15% of businesses that need the money are getting the help. So you have to at some point come to terms with the reality that you could be one of the 85 or 90% of small business owners that is getting no help from the government. I mean, I'm not saying you can't. I'm pulling for you, right? I trust me. You all are in my prayers at night. Okay, I'm hoping everybody that needs help can get the help that they need. But the reality is the math, and I'm a math guy, says that, look, best case scenario, we're going to see less than 20% of this businesses that company and the businesses in this country that need the money get it. And more than likely, it's going to be closer to 10 to 15%. So if you're one of the 80 to 90% that can't get money, just know there's other options available. As I started with, don't forget the best program we've seen is Credit Line Hybrid. Up to $150,000 in credit lines, 0% rates for up to 18 months, regular credit card rates after that, no doc, no bank statements, no tax returns, none of that. Cash flow doesn't matter. You could take cash out of these. That's why it's a hybrid. You get 0% rates and can take cash out. You can get approved as a startup. If you don't have a 680, you need a 680 FICO score or higher. If you don't have a 680, you could bring in a family member, dad, mom. You could bring in a friend. You could bring in a partner. Anybody can sign as a partner, as a guarantor for you. You don't need collateral. You don't need cash flow. You'll get multiple credit lines. If you want to know how much you'll get approved for, look at your highest credit limit you have on your credit report now. If you have a Visa card for the $20,000 limit, you're going to get about 5 to 8 times that amount. Some of these accounts will report to the business credit reporting agencies to help you build business credit. The lender will charge you a fee for the program. 9.99% is what they charge our clients. It's normally 12. They roll that fee into the actual credit line. So what's going to happen is you're going to get a credit line. They're going to roll their fee in just like it would happen with a normal SBA loan. This is the number one program we're seeing funded right now because the credit markets are untouched, meaning we're still seeing credit issuers issue money at the same pace they were. Now, let me give you a disclaimer and a warning. These sources are experts at getting you multiple credit lines with very high limits, but there has been a change in the credit markets. What they're reporting back to us is that you used to be able to go to Bank of America and get approved for that Visa card, right? Now, the majority of applications they're seeing are declined, and it's requiring a conversation with the underwriter to get it approved. So if you're out and tried to apply for a credit card and got denied, my advice, try a source like this instead, because it will take another step of calling and getting an underwriter on the phone to then work with them on turning that denial into an actual approval. We saw that happen a lot where banks just online kind of put on the brakes, started declining everybody, and then you have to call in and you're still able to get approved if you know the back-end system to get approved. But we're seeing that loosening up a little. So when I say the credit markets are untouched, I want to make sure that I provide clarity with that. Also, don't forget you can still build business credit for your EIN that's not linked to your social. High limit revolving accounts, Amazon, Walmart, eventually get to Visa, MasterCard, all that kind of stuff. Completely separate for your consumer credit report. No inquiries on your consumer credit report. These accounts reported your business credit reports. Your personal credit doesn't matter. You don't need collateral. You don't need cash flow. This is money anybody can get. So if we can help you with the credit line hybrid business credit, give us a ring at 877-600-2487. You can also get approved at creditsuite.com/get funding. So some options there for you. And don't forget, a lot of other funding is still available for business owners right now, okay? We're still seeing a lot of private equity. If you have any kind of angel investor relationships, venture capital, there's still $1 trillion. We think that they are going to dump into this small business system over the next year or less. $1 trillion. They are really eager to lend. Anything based on cash flow, revenue lending, merchant cash advances, term loans, lines of credit. This stuff is all indefinitely on hold, but you can still get it. You just need to have better risk factors. They want to see better credit, 650 type credit scores. They want to see that you've been in business for a couple years. They want to see that you've also got consistent revenue, that you make probably 150 to 200,000 a year in revenue. So they're real sticklers. You've got to really be stable during this time to get that. Remember, the second option is go based on your actual collateral. What asset do you possess or someone around you has that they'll let you use as collateral to get funding? All kinds of assets we could talk about here. Stocks, bonds, IRAs, 401ks, commercial vehicles, commercial real estate, residential real estate, account receivables, purchase orders. If you're an insurance agent, book of business that you have could work. do you own equipment? Do you own inventory? Do you need inventory for your online Amazon business? Do you need equipment? All that financing is still just, it's all good, status quo. It's all still happening, free flowing like it always was. Okay, then you get into the credit line hybrid, which I introduced you to as well. If you're flipping homes, you can still get money for that. The biggest things that are on hold right now, you can't get any other kind of SBA loan. You just can't. SBA's 504 real estate loan, their 7A loan, everything in the SBA system is stopped, as you can imagine. Term loans, lines of credit from banks, stopped as well because the banks are backlogged. Revenue lending and merchant cash advance, money lent to you based on consistent revenue. Hello. Obviously ceased, right? This money existed because they lent you money based on past revenue, anticipating your future revenue would stay consistent. Obviously, that didn't work. That whole system has to be reworked. We will soon see what the new revenue lending programs look like in the months to come. So tons of options still available for you. And if we can help you along the way, then just let us know, okay? We never charge you for funding. We work with every legitimate funding source in one place. We'll help you get the money you can get now and graduate to SBA loans. Okay, so our goal is that, you can give us a call and you don't need to look for funding again. We have a whole funding team that'll help you. Now, don't get me wrong. We've got a business credit building system that will cost you money, but you could offer business credit financing as a service through our partner program, or you could build business credit, improve your fundability, and all that. So we do have a software that costs money to work with our advising team to build business credit. But when it comes to you getting a loan, getting credit line hybrid, getting a kind of loan, we never charge you for that. So if we can help you at all with getting funding, we are here to help you. And also make sure that you know that at the top right of our website, there's all kinds of links to get helpful information. We have multiple podcasts released every week, like 300,000 downloads on our podcast, very popular. We've also are releasing live streams on YouTube and Facebook multiple times during the week, Instagram once a week as well. And then we also have daily tips on Twitter, on Facebook, on Instagram to keep you informed of what's going on. If you go to creditsuite.com at the top right of our page, you'll be able to access our links. And I also included our information here, including email address, phone number, and all that. So I want to go through, I had a lot of questions here. So I want to go through and I want to make sure that I can answer any and all the questions you have. So before I wrap up, Hag says, or Haig, I'm not sure if I pronounced it right. Should I try to apply through Bank of America? I have an account or a smaller bank that are giving easier. And do I have to have an account with the smaller bank? You just heard my recommendation. I'd apply for both. The smaller bank, it depends on the smaller bank. Everybody I've seen pretty much wants you to have a relationship with them to accept your application. That's everything I've seen. And there's a lot of class action lawsuits to the big banks about that, but that's what I've seen. But if you have a relationship with Bank of America and a small bank, yes, you should apply with both. Just be able to withdraw your application if one gets submitted so it's not considered to be fraud. Okay, and Jay Moody says, SBA just ran my personal credit today. That's fantastic news. Now, before that happened, first of all, that shouldn't even happen unless you're talking about an EIDL loan. And if you are talking about an EIDL loan, then that means your bank got the application in and they're processing the application. That's great news. But that's interesting too, because your bank should have told you that they had submitted that application. So it's interesting. Vince Carter says, with the PPP, can it be forgiven if you only spend 25% on rent? I currently don't have any employees. In order for the money to be forgiven, up to 75% or more needs to be used on payroll. If you're using within 8 weeks of getting the money, up to 25% can be used to pay all your utilities and your rent. Now, it's also interest on mortgages, but your question implies that you rent, so you could use that money to pay rent. You could use that money to also pay utilities. But they're also going to come in, and something I maybe didn't mention that I should have, is that you need to maintain your current employment levels. So if you have 5 full-time employees, then in order for the money to be forgiven, all of it, they're going to want to see you retain 5 employees and that they're still full-time, paid about the same money that they were. So if you had employees and laid them off, in order for that money to be forgiven, you can hire them back before June 30 and have that money forgiven as well. So an expansion on your question. Janelle says, is it okay to do a different state? Delaware, Wisconsin. to open a new corporation? Yeah, you absolutely can. I mean, look, in most places, it makes sense that where you actually, your business is where the business is registered. It will throw up red flags. But as your business gets bigger, like we're a bigger business, and so we register all of our stuff in Delaware. Our accountants eventually force us to basically move everything to Delaware and our attorneys because that's better for us. But in the beginning and starting a business, it doesn't make a lot of sense to go to a place because it's cheaper to file a corporation. Because if you live in California and you have a business in Florida, you understand how that throws up all kinds of red flags on the lender and credit issuing standpoint. So it will make it difficult to get funding when you do that in the beginning. Vince says, can I get approved for the PPP if I've already received an EIDL? Yes, you can. They will roll the EIDL loan into the PPP as you saw. Your PPP loan can be the total amount of 2.5 times the amount of your average payroll plus the amount of any EIDL loan that you're rolling in as well. So it will be rolled into PPP. And Jay Moody says, yes, EIDL loan. Yep. So you notice, D. Moody, that the minute you said that your credit was pulled, I immediately said it was an EIDL loan. And the reason for that is that you need to credit qualify for EIDL. So if you don't have business credit established, it could be more difficult. You need to meet SBA's normal credit requirements in order to get an EIDL loan. There is no credit requirements with PPP. Felicia says, I applied, I've reserved number, but still haven't spoken with underwriters. What does this mean? Well, it means you're in limbo. We all are. So this is what happens, and everybody's different. So I can't tell you. I just cannot tell you what the bank with your bank's experience is, but I can tell you my own. With Regions, they went ahead, they notified us when they were moving to a review status of reviewing our application. That happened 3 days later. We got a call from an underwriter with questions to finish up the application. That was our process with Regions. They notified us by email that our application was soon to be reviewed. It was reviewed. We got a call. We answered questions, and then that finished the review process. Now we're in line to get it submitted to SBA. With our primary bank, they waited 1 week. Then they came back and said, we changed everything. New application, new documents we need. We now need all this stuff. We got that stuff together in a matter of hours and submitted it back to them. And they then assured us that we are front of line, ready to go to SBA the minute the funding becomes available. That's what happened. So to answer your question, Felicia, we had zero communication. We knew people at the bank. We got nowhere until they got to our application. Now, with our small community bank, we found someone. Right? That's someone you always want that responded to our email within an hour that tells us what's going on. We tried everybody and found somebody that would communicate. With Regions, we found nobody. They wouldn't even talk to us till they got to the review of our application stage. So it depends, like I mentioned, Felicia, where did you actually submit the deal? Okay, which lender? I can't answer the question even if you tell me, but every lender handles it differently. So if you applied through Wells Fargo, I'd be Googling what's Wells Fargo's approval process like so you can hear from other people that are going through it of where your place in line is. But I will tell you that Regions notified us by an email that we were about to be underwritten. That's how it happened with us. Every bank is treating this definitely different. I get a lot of thanks. This is with Lindio. Felicia, that could be a problem. You need to do research. And if I were you, Felicia, I would immediately apply somewhere else as well. Because Lindio is not an SBA lender. They are not. They are one of these sources that started accepting applications for PPP loans. Then they had to place them with the bank. So remember, I told you in the beginning that there's a big problem with a lot of sources like Cabbage, like Lindio, like NAV, and everybody online that said, give us your PPP applications. But the problem with a lot of them is they have to place them with banks. Some of them didn't even have banks to place them with. So again, just because they accepted your application doesn't mean that you're in line to get that submitted to SBA. It might even be in line to get submitted to a bank that can submit it to SBA. So my advice, if you're using a fintech lender or an agent that's not the actual direct source that submits the loan to SBA, my advice is you may want to consider a secondary source, or you might be unpleasantly surprised to realize that you're in line just to get your application submitted to a bank to get in line to have it submitted to SBA. Okay, so just something to keep in mind there. Okay, D. Moody says, what's the score they're asking for? D. Moody, SBA says that you need to remove any blemishes on your credit report is what they say. So they don't really give you a credit score requirement. But SBA's credit score requirements are usually you have to have pretty good credit. I've seen 780s denied there because they had any derogatory credit. And they pull up what's called a FICO SBSS score. You have to have a 140 FICO SBSS score. FICO SBSS is a combination of your business credit and your personal credit. It combines it. So it looks at your business credit scores first. So if you have some established business credit, you could get a PPP. It's easier to get the 140 you need through FICO Small Business Score. If you don't have that, if you don't actually have that, then it's harder. Meaning the SBA or FICO SBSS looks at business credit scores first and personal credit scores second. So if your personal credit scores kind of suck, but your business credit scores are really good, you could still have a 140 score to get SBA. But if you don't have any business credit established, it's pretty tough to get an SBA or to get a FICO SBSS of 140. And if you have some business credit established, that will offset some damaged personal credit. So all I can answer to you is that you need a FICO score of 140 to actually get an SBA loan. And if you do it, look at any of my training on YouTube, you'll see how the FICO SBSS score works. I break the whole thing down to give you more insight. Okay, I'm going to ask you one more question. I'm going to wrap up. Gamal, excuse me if I mispronounced your name, says, I applied on the SBA website since March 28th for EIDL. I got a confirmation number, and that's all. I haven't heard anything yet. I gave you their information. You can follow up with them. But again, if you got a confirmation number from SBA, they're just waiting to fund the app, and right now they don't have funding available. So that could mean that you're in the next round of funding. But again, your guess is as good as mine. We're all waiting to hear that right now. But again, it's worth reaching out to SBA through an email and phone call to see if you can get anywhere. I don't think you can. Otherwise, you just got to wait your place in line. But you've been waiting a long time. But as long as you got your confirmation, that's the most you could do for EIDL. SBA dedicated all their resources to PPP and kind of put EIDL in the back seat. So EIDL loans are taking longer than PPP loans to get it done. I will tell you that much. Okay? I'm going to wrap this up. Guys, I'm not, just because I'm going away from here doesn't mean I'm going away. I go live at 2 o'clock on Facebook where I'm actually on camera and you can answer questions to me there. Tomorrow is Wednesday. On Wednesday, I go live on YouTube again at 11 a.m. where you could eat, and these are all Eastern time. Thursday, I go live at 11 o'clock on Facebook and 11:30 on Instagram, basically. So I'm in these social platforms Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday if I can help you. If you want to talk to my team, give us a ring. 877-600-2487, info@creditsuite.com, creditsuite.com/get funding. Whenever I do days like today, we have thousands of people that are watching, engaging, so you might hit a backlog in our phone line. Don't worry about it. Just leave a message, and our team will call you back almost always within minutes, definitely within an hour. Okay, so our team will get back to you and answer any questions you have about all the finance that we talked about today, the business credit, as well as anything we could do to help you on the SBA as well. And CF in Texas says, thank you so much for busting your, I can't say that word, to get this information out. Thank you for all tuning in. Okay, so I will continue to keep you abreast of what's going on as we know it and have updates on our social channels as well. Thanks for tuning in, and I will see you all back here Wednesday tomorrow at 11 o'clock Eastern to talk about more ways to get money. I'm going to be diving into angel investing. I'm going to be diving into venture capital. I'm going to be diving into all kinds of ways over the next few weeks to get money that a lot of people aren't thinking about, which helps you get money probably easier and faster than SBA. So that will come in the weeks to come. Thanks everybody for tuning in. Give us a ring and let us know what we can do to help you get money to grow your business.